Welcome, welcome to Love Medicine TV. I am your host, Sacred Walker, CEO and producer of Love Medicine Institute TV and founding CEO of Kuumba Health. I am joined here by Angela Ambrosia, who is a master's level healing artist, spiritual mentor, and love and meditation teacher. Thank you so much for joining us on Love Medicine TV today.
Thank you, Sacred.
Yes. Cheers, cheers. So today's hot topic is one that many, from young adults to providers and families of varying ages, are really looking at today. Is we're going to be exploring today the hot topic of how does high exposure to violence on young adults affect their outlook of love? And interwoven with that, we're really going to look at the ways that technology are both pulling us together and also increasing loneliness. All right. So for those out there, get ready to dive in, type underneath where you are joining us from, what Love Medicine tea you have today, and as well, any relationship you have to that subject at hand. All right. So I'm about to dive into that. I'm a holistic psychologist and as well do a lot of pain to power work. And so in that spirit of transforming pain to power, we're going to pull from Louise Hay's card, Love Medicine, for our Love Medicine moment. All right. So Angela, if you would do me the pleasure of picking one for our audience today.
Thank you.
All
there
right.
You
go. Okay. So powerful. So this is interesting because we're talking about children and exposure and our inner child, right? So it says, I nurture my inner child.
Oh my God.
Loving your inner child helps you to remember your innocence and recognize how much life loves you. Ask the child within, what can I do for you today? I nurture my inner child. Loving your inner child helps you to remember your innocence and recognize how much life loves you. Ask the child within, what can I do for you today? So, maybe we should start with that before we dive in. What is something, Angela, that you have done positively, for your inner child? People often think about childhood as small children, but we forget we have inner child within. So what is something that you've done positively for your inner child today?
Today, I woke up a little bit grumpy because I knew I had a list of things to do for work. And one of the things I did was I actually sat and I talked to my inner child. It sounds a bit strange, talking to myself, but I used to talk to myself when I was a kid, so I still do it as an adult. Now I know who I'm talking to. And I asked myself, you really want to start work, but what's not buzzing for you? What's not clicking for you? And I got pretty clear answers from my inner child. And I have a pretty good relationship with my inner child. Pretty much I know that if I'm grumpy, either my body's not having enough exercise or enough sleep or enough food or tea or something physical, or my emotional inner child is sort of going, but this isn't fun, or what if we don't get to watch X and Y Z TV show tonight or whatever. So I schedule, I let my inner child know we're going to do this at this time or it'll happen today. Don't worry, it's on the to-do list. Yeah. And that way my inner child kind of comes with me to work. And that was pretty quick today because then all of the things I had to get done got done really quickly. The funny thing too was when I went to do my exercise, my inner child was really still a bit, no, I want to do it this way. So they changed the way I did my exercise today. Sometimes when I do my exercise and get into routine, it becomes too monotonous and I need to change it up. That's what my inner child's there for.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I can definitely relate to that. I'm hearing you say that there's a way that you give your inner child the spaciousness, but it also, there's a way that you have to kind of give your inner child the routine around exercise and like that, kind of freeing that up. And I can relate to that this morning. So we're based on the East Coast in the US. You're based in France, so it's a different time zone. I want to acknowledge that. So morning here, based out of the New York tri-state area, I woke up this morning and I was very intentional on putting on the Om. And so Om means in alignment with, I see it as your higher self in alignment with God. And so I put that on, but I've been really feeling pulled to dance. So this morning, as is going to be my commitment in moving forward, was that I put that on and I just let whatever can come flow through me. And it was such a shift. It was so clear that my inner child needed me, yes, to be still and poised and professional and put on the pearls and do all those things that sometimes we're called to do. And before I started my day, I needed to dance so that I can remember to celebrate life, so that I can remember to stay optimistic no matter what was going on in the world, on the news, etc. And so for me, that's been my, renewed commitment is every day, 5 minutes, put on meditative music and to dance. And so that connects to fitness, but like a dance with spirit for me. And so I'm wondering, in that vein, what is it that you have in your mug today? And what is your relationship to our hot topic? Because there's light to it, and then there's also shadow. So what are you drinking? And then what is your relationship to our topic?
I have Earl Grey tea with a bit of almond milk. My relationship to the topic comes today, actually, the day after we had an attack from a young man. He's not a teenager, but he was a young man in France, in Marseille, on 2 women, and he was crying the name of Allah, which, as he killed them. So quite a stark contrast between Earl Grey and a young man exhibiting violence at a train station, and it's going to be the first, if it's a terrorist attack, the first terrorist attack at a train station in France. And I was talking to my partner about, he works with children, teaching them sport, and he says that the children are becoming more aggressive in France and that they don't have an outlet for their energy. So as he's teaching them sport, they're literally scattered. He's finding them more rebellious towards not just him, because he's an adult, so kids rebel or just push the boundary, but they're pushing the boundaries much more than when he was younger, and also being violent with their fellow teammates and saying expletive words, calling them fat or other names. And the racial thing in his area, because he comes from an ethnically diverse part of Paris, is not so big. But if it's not your ethnicity, you're fat, you're X, you're Y, kids are saying things more, which is very not French. I grew up in Australia, so expletives and fat and this was that were thrown around when I grew up. But he's noticing, and the violence we're seeing in France is coming from young men who feel disenfranchised or whatever they feel. And also just the kids are being more verbally aggressive and scattered. They're not able to focus and give full attention to doing something that's fun, like playing. He teaches soccer. That's fun. He teaches football. So why can't they focus on something that means people are coming together? Plus, one of the kids was quite violent. And we're talking, he teaches 5 to 8-year-olds. And violence at that age, it can come from family expressing violence in front of the children. But there's this ambience of violence on the televisions, and the parents are probably watching that because the parents are worried about the terrorism that's happening as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's so tricky. It's when you first shared that, it really saddened me to hear that someone had, perpetuated violence in the name of Allah, because, a lot of the research coming out of the University of Stanford, out of Union Theological, where I went to school, really shows that the Quran does not justify violence. It's not something that is perpetuated. Actually, there are more sites of the word love throughout the Quran than there are reinforcements of violence, right? And so this idea of smiting and wrath is actually not seen in Islam the way that it might be seen in other traditions. And so it was really saddened to hear that. And I think it also, to your point, speaks to kind of the climate, the climate of what is going on, or a feeling of repression, as a person of African descent who has experienced many generations of violence, perpetuated violence, I'm so aware of that. Like I'm so aware of, people name calling or so on. And the way that it relates to me is that I have seen it with the young adults that I've worked with through our student wellness and leadership. And then I've also seen it as well with parents dealing with it, like feeling like they are so overwhelmed, feeling like, there's an intense pressure to digest everything that's going on. And so I noticed that has increased, and with the increased exposure to access to the internet. So I can easily, I'm thinking of, many young adults that I know that have met with me in our first session for whatever the topic was, usually around either, being impacted by violence, or if they were not, maybe they were exploring their identity. And they were telling me things that 10 years ago, the average adult didn't know because they found it from the internet, right?
Yeah.
And the catch, right. And so I'm seeing family members trying to wrap their minds around how to help their young adults or caring providers figuring out, like, how do I help you feel like this is a safe space when the world doesn't feel safe? And so that has been something that I've noticed. And you're right, it's being expressed somatically. So, many people are increasingly heightened and very aware and feeling threatened all the time, whether there's a threat or not. And so I definitely can relate to a lot of what you're sharing, what you're seeing in France is definitely something that we're seeing here nationally, and I'm wondering, when you speak about, the communities that you are involved in, you're coming from Australia, you're in France, what community do you represent? What community do you feel like, identified with? What community do you share love medicine with, kind of in light of the fact that there's a heightened feeling of anxiousness in our climate?
I specifically focus on women and women building love in their families and relationships. So I work a lot with women building their love for themselves and their love for their body, because I come from a really strong background of hating my body and learning to love my body. And when I learned to love my body, it transformed everything so much from inside. So I work mainly with women, some women who've had abuse, some women who really just have not had dramatic abuse but don't know how to feel love or joy for who they are. If it's not their body, it's their personality. And then I assist a lot of women anywhere from the age of, my main target is around 45 and older, because I'm 45 and older, but I work with younger women as well. And I also work with young women who are on the verge of adulthood, which is legally different in different countries, but anywhere from like 16 to 18. And I'm looking to work with younger adults in Australia. I'm moving between Australia and France. So I'm looking in the next 3 years to set up work with young adults, both girls and boys. But that's not there yet. That's in the future. But it's been a big topic for the young women around sexuality. And love is not a topic that's discussed in young women's relationships. It's not discussed with the boys, and it's a really scary prospect if you're a young woman looking to date.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that is very tricky. And I want to get back to that point about the, for young women who are looking to date, I want to get back to that. And I want to also respond to, what are the ways that our communities, because we've known each other for some time through the Holistic Chamber. So that's a community that I feel connected to. That's how we've met. And so we've known each other for some time. And it's like we bring a sense of love to the work that we do, just from different angles and approaches. And so it's so rich. I predominantly, with my private practice, focused on those between 21 and say 38 to 40, usually that range, who have come and something happened to them when they were younger where they didn't have, spaciousness to play, or some early childhood trauma happened and they're really feeling like that's impacting them today, and they're really wanting to step into that higher vision of excellence, or they're noticing their relationships are impacted. And so I'll bring in drama therapy techniques and art and mindfulness and mantras and different forms and clinical approaches to doing some deeper work and creating some goals to move things forward. But interestingly enough, it is about their inner child having been exposed to some form of violence and not having had a safety net to feel cared for. And so when the world is overwhelming and then your inner child, your early experiences were overwhelming, then it feels like, well, where do I feel safe, you know? And so I create those safety spaces so that people can really move some energy. And then the role playing in the theater really help people to change their relationship to that. And then my other community, I would say, are trainers, like people who go into organizations who work with people who have been impacted by violence. Like I see that a lot, that as I think it's 1 in 3 women are impacted by gender-based violence worldwide, but then there are LGBT people who have intimate partner violence and so on. And so I'll go in and, you know, see that as a part of my community. The people I'm fortunate to work with may have people that come to them and they are holding a lot of space for them and they feel really overwhelmed. And so having a safe space at work to be able to process through, to relieve their stress, to strive, to, you know, negotiate different ways of relating to their clients has been really helpful. And so going back to, so that's my community I'm fortunate to be connected to you with. And so going back to the dating, I would love to talk about that some more because I feel like that's something that many people experience, but especially young people in particular. I think it's a fear that many people have of like, oh my goodness, there's like a fear of teen pregnancy. There's a fear of teenagers connecting. There's a fear of teenagers not using condoms. There's so much fear around teens connecting and having intimacy and love. And then teens are also developmentally figuring out their lives and pushing parents away and not. And so, you know, I'm wondering, what is a trend that you've seen connected to either young people or adults struggling with inner child issues around connection, around, you know, finding that love they want or isolating? Like, what are some of the trends that you've seen in that dance?
Some of the parents I noticed, because I'm looking at that 45 plus generation and what we've come through with the insurgence of technology. So the 45 plus crowd grew up without, we all had a TV set and that was it. We had a telephone, corded, landed. Your parents knew who called you.
That's right.
So it's kind of embarrassing if you were dating.
And your parents probably on the other line. I've definitely experienced that.
Or like, I just didn't go there. I had a traditional Sicilian family, so forget it, right? It just was out. I just put it outside the planet, Angela. And so that was that generation now with their kids. They're doing a lot of that. But I didn't have to do that. My parents didn't have to deal with this. So they're shocked, like if they see porn on their kids' phone or the teachers tell them. I don't know if they have that discussion with the teachers, but I also have colleagues in Australia who are my 45 plus crowd that teach, and they're seeing the 12-year-old boys with the porn on their phones. And that's not just violence, but that's a certain way of thinking about love. Right? I'm not even thinking about love. It's a certain way of thinking about dating. Let's just say that. It's not love. So there's that trend that there's, oh God, I didn't have to deal with this. How do I do it? And pretty much no answers, because it's hard enough to have the sex talk with your kids, let alone talking about porn when you grew up and there was one TV set in the house and porn didn't enter the house until they invented the VHS, which didn't. You know, it's so strange. And so the trend with the young kids I'm noticing, because I have a niece who's 12 and she's has an interesting brain, and meaning I don't label her, but she's one of those new kids that has a different way of looking at the world. She's striving from her innocence, talking about the inner child, to create love. She wants connection. But there's this she's got this incredible relationship to YouTube. I've been having the fear-based things like, oh my God, what's she going to do with boys and YouTube videos? And then I see her gravitate to YouTube and see the most innocent stuff like Ukraine's Got Talent. And so, so there's this craving in the young for romance, fun, intimacy, dance, being powerful in their attractiveness and their sexiness. And there's very little, the trend I'm seeing is very little tutelage for young people from about 8 to 15, because that's when their sexual energy starts to come out to play and it's just innocent, and then puberty comes. There's very little tutelage to how to be, like you're saying, Sacred, about dramatizing it. There's a lot of, oh my God, don't wear that. Oh my God, what are you doing? Don't touch yourself. Oh, but there's no creative play for, oh, you like someone, do you? I mean, we used to read really kind of vanilla type books like Anne of Green Gables, if anyone's watching who knows that. It's real vanilla, right? A girl has a crush on a guy, but she pretends she doesn't like him and he hates, whatever that vanilla stuff is. But with the kids, like my niece, they're looking for it. And instead of us freaking out and going, we didn't have to deal with this, let's get creative and let's create something. That's what my passion is. I work with my niece to get her into discussing emotions, discussing she fortunately hasn't been exposed to dramatic violence but has been around it, but she's had a lot of good things around her. So we look at, what do you like, what do you want to create, if you have a boyfriend, what are you going to do? And I don't mean about putting on the condom. What do you want to do with him? Let's get playful. Let's look at what's possible. And that opens a conversation in a direction I'm more comfortable with. And then eventually when the condom and the other stuff comes up, because she's pretty forthright, because I've encouraged her to be so, about sex, we can deal with it. The other trend I'm noticing is that sex becomes a taboo subject, as it is and will be. And it becomes like, don't do that, rather than, well, what do you think? And is that going to be enjoyable for you? What do you, when you jack off? We don't go there with dirtiness with kids because it's so taboo, but they're watching it anyway. So let's explore it. If you're jacking off, what does it do for you? What do you feel? Let's give them a verbal expression about sex, because then there's less tendency to repress and then go into violent expression of it. So that's one of the forms of violence I see, is not having a way to talk about sex turns into violence.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely, just to piggyback on that, the not having space to talk about the longing for intimacy, is something that people who are young adults experience. I know when I've done a lot of sexual health support work, I've noticed young adults that I've worked with have a really hard time because they literally just wanted to feel cared for. And if they felt rejected by their parents or their family, then they longed for that and sometimes ended up in unhealthy connections. And then also I've seen it with caring professionals whose inner child had challenging experiences, and they might mistake something that is flirtation or something that is, something, it's much more like a friendship connection for that agape unconditional love, and then completely feel like, oh my gosh, never doing this again. Love is not real. I can't stand this. I don't believe. And so having a healing, what I call like the filter of like emotional abuse, where you didn't have, like, I know for me growing up in a challenging household environment, one of my areas of post-traumatic growth was that I learned how to recognize when I was listening with an ear that filtered violence. Like, I might hear something and I'm receiving it completely different than the way the person meant it. And if I'm not careful, would push someone away as a result of wanting connection, of wanting love. And so it's, I think, important for us who go in as caring professionals, who are in these environments where we build communities, where we're connecting, where we're either with our coworkers, with our families, to be able to voice in words, in language, like, I miss you, I need an ear, I'm overwhelmed, I feel isolated. And I think that's what violence does. It isolates us, and then we reinforce that isolation. And so something that I've seen work really, really well has been pulling people together in groups and finding ways for us to create common goals, either young adults or adults. Like that has worked because sometimes that heals some of the divides that we feel within that we may not have a language for, that might turn into a heartburn or a stomach pang, you know, because silence, we've seen out of even John Hopkins research, is very damaging. It's very damaging to the body. Unexpressed need for love, right? And so I think it really speaks to what you're sharing, that you've seen in your niece, like wanting the language and helping her to build that, or what I've seen with my organizational support, like wanting to really connect, but then not really knowing if it's going to be safe. And so I'm asking, I'm wondering what for you then would be a love medicine antidote? How would you, kind of address a need for love that might be unfulfilled, or someone struggling to find a language because, say, for example, a young person or an adult who's struggling with an inner child who had exposure to violence and is struggling with their outlook on love? How would you help to bridge that? And if you're watching, go ahead and chime in. Yay, hurrah, I get that. That's me. Or I disagree, because this is an open dialogue, because I didn't forget about you, Love Medicine streamers. We're so glad to have you here. So glad to have Angela Ambrosia here. So, how would you be able to respond or support? Can you give us a couple of pointers of how you have done that?
I really loved your example about when a kid finds a invitation and they're so hungry for love that they think it's that universal or agape unconditional love, and they get signals confused. Also, what I've learned from my niece and other kids that I've lived with, they know things intuitively, but sometimes they need an adult to confirm it, or they look to their peers to confirm it, and that's where things can get misinterpreted, like the signals go off. So one of the things I go back to is that feeling of what feels safe, and that's really hard if you've had abuse. But I always go back to a feeling of, well, this feels good. Even if you've been abused, you've got to find safe spaces and things that feel good and feel nurturing. And when the world out there is communicating more and more fear and terror and unknowns and change and chaos, it's not actually going to be maybe on your doorstep. If it's on your doorstep, it's a different, you're talking about survival. But if you are living with your own trauma or your own looking for intimacy, you've got to find where safety is for you. And safety can be a family member that you can talk to. It can be a teacher at school. It can be for us care workers like you, Sacred, creating those spaces in your community, physical spaces for kids, and also in schools. That's my hope in Australia, to create a program for the kids where the teachers don't have to do it, because teachers in certain schools can't talk about sex. So for young or growing people, young adults to my age, it's going back to that feeling of what feels safe. And when you find it, build a nest there. Don't stay in your own space, because we're here to share. Like, you're creating groups to create the dialogue. You start, like my niece, she gravitated to me so she could create the dialogue. She initiated and I responded, but I also was encouraging the conversation. But we internally know when the space is safe for us. So gravitate them and build a nest.
I love that analogy of building a nest where it feels safe. And I think that can be so anti what we learn, because if you've experienced something and your nest was not safe, or have aspects of it weren't safe, then you might end up replicating a nest because that's what feels familiar. Or there are some blockages around creating new nests. And so what I'm hearing you say is that you're really looking to help young adults and adults really create healthier nests. or healthier ways to relate to their nest. They're kind of giving them tools so they can be powerful beings. And I can definitely, something that I've seen and I can connect to that, something I've seen a lot have been logos that, especially women, and I've seen a lot of folks in the LGBTQ community. For those who are watching, L is lesbian, gay, bi, trans, questioning, and queer community, has been images like the pretty is the new strong, or strong is the new pretty, or, beautiful and bold. Like, I've been seeing a lot of that, and I think that that's a real call to embrace that energy, because people think of sex as sex and connection and really orgasm, but many people now are seeing it as a claiming of, like, I am grounded in myself and I am connected. And so that is a real shift that I really appreciate about millennials, bringing in a culture shift, because historically gender roles have not always said that being strong, being bold, being outspoken was something that was celebrated in femininity. And in many cultures, including African cultures, matriarchal societies really proclaimed and celebrated the strength of what it meant to be a woman, that you can be a woman warrior and still be soft and feminine. And so it's great to see that balance of feminine and masculine in a lot of people. And, the way that I have seen it, I'm thinking of one of the people I'm fortunate to work with who had a lot of history of, like, name calling when she was younger, and now is, like, really beginning to see that the name calling was not her. Like, she did not do anything wrong to deserve the picking and the bullying. And Bullying Prevention Month, it's a reminder that we don't deserve that, and that we do deserve connection. It's been a beautiful shift to watch her now say, I do deserve love. I do deserve healthy relationships. I do deserve people who are going to celebrate my full figured body. And so, I love that. I love love in that way, that agape love that can first start here. So I really appreciate and respect that aspect, that shift, that transformation. And definitely shout out to those who I'm fortunate and blessed to serve, who are also watching. And so in the spirit of recognizing that you all are joining us and interacting, please shout out, like, what way do you honor love? What way do you, recognize the history that you've had and had your own post-traumatic growth or your own love medicine moment? Go ahead and respond underneath while we take a moment of breath, deep breathing, getting all caught up in the love medicine. Okay, so just finally, because we're at our time, we're a little bit over. So, but you know what? In love medicine time, there's always spaciousness. So I appreciate your time, Angela, for joining us today. Give us a few pointers or tools that you want to leave our viewers with today. Some practical, tangible, this is how I can apply this to either my life as a young person, my life as an adult, to honor my inner child. What are some practical tools? And I'll share some as well.
I want to leave with two. The first one is, when the world is exhibiting so much fear, don't buy into it, because it's not real. There's a lot of media putting it out there to try and say, like you're saying, Sacred, about that strong boldness. You can't do it. You can. We have evolved in our world to a point where you have freedom now. You might have to stand up for it and fight for it. But if that's a clue, whenever the chaos is out there, to go deep inside, or as deep as you can. And the second piece is to start your day with that. It's like Sacred's dance that she shared, to start your day and check in, what am I feeling? And acknowledge, if it's fearful, it's not you. It could be your emotions picking up. But really say, no, this is who I am, and claim it at the beginning of the day. Celebrate it in some way, like a dance or a affirmation, whatever, because that initiates your energy for the day. And the more time you do that in the morning, the less you're going to pick up the fear that's around, because it's trying to throw us off, but it won't if you stay bold.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I like that. That'd be a great hashtag. Feel free to borrow that, Love Medicine viewers. Stay bold hashtag. Powerful, powerful. And before I share my tips and ways that people can move forward with me, tell me what are the ways for those who are watching that they can move forward with you, and maybe just one or two ways that folks who are watching can follow up to continue to get some support.
So I have a Facebook channel or page called Transformed Relationships, and that's my coaching program. It's a powerful transformation of what love can be. And there you can join the Facebook page, find my Facebook Lives on Wednesdays, and also there's a sign up. I'll send the link to put on the video below for my free videos. They're love tips on how to create that connection and togetherness, and it's called the Love and Togetherness blog.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love that, the Love and Togetherness blog. Absolutely. And do check out, say that Facebook page one more time.
It's Transformed, Transformed Relationships with an S.
Perfect, perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And some tips that I would give, and I want to make sure that I check this here because I don't want to misquote. So one of the things that I would say would be for parents who are watching, who have children or who have made a commitment. I know many of the people out there who I've worked with in vulnerable communities, whether you're a parent or a provider, you've made a commitment. I went through something challenging. I don't want this young person that I'm raising, my child, the person I'm serving, to go through this too. I would say at least once a week, have some ritual with a young person in your life. And if you are a young person watching, have this ritual with yourself or someone that you trust, someone who you can share, and they will hold your sensitivity with the volt that you deserve, okay? That you have one ritual you do a week that is a reinforcement of love, so that when love does not show up for you, or love does not show up for that young person, that they have a mirror. Even if they're having a moment, or even if you're having a moment where you're really experiencing overwhelm, that you know the foundation of who you are is goodness, and the foundation of who you are is love. So that can be as simple as looking up the word metta, M-E-T-T-A, on the internet, which means loving kindness, and saying, I wish for you to be free of suffering. I wish for myself to be free of suffering. I wish for you to be happy. I wish for myself to be happy. I love myself. Okay, so it can be as straightforward as that. And you look each other in the eye, which I know can be overwhelming sometimes, but if it's safe and true, it's worth it. Or looking in the mirror and saying that. And trust me, it's something that I've seen with parents that I've been fortunate to work with out of California that has been really dynamic to watch relationships shift, because all of a sudden it's an equalizer. It's like, oh, I value you and I don't want you to suffer. My second tip for providers who are watching, this has been informed by some research out of Johns Hopkins, is daily forgiveness ritual. I had so many days when I came out of being in multiple counseling sessions, multiple health counseling meetings, took someone to the EMT, overwhelmed, came home, supported family. And at the end of the day, if you are a compassionate provider committed to patient-centered care, you're going to feel as though you could have done a little bit more. And so something that they talk about at Johns Hopkins and looking at the impact of gender-based violence is that person came to you after a lot of different steps. Usually people come to providers after a lot of issues that have arisen. So forgive yourself. Take one moment each day and just say, I have done my best. I send forgiveness to my inner child, because your inner child might feel like it wasn't rescued. He or she wasn't rescued. They weren't rescued. And so you might, if you're not careful, try to rescue someone else. And so then that really can be a true act of loving kindness to yourself, and an act of love medicine. All right. So I forgive myself. I did my very best. And then you wake up the next day and you continue to do your very best because you're powerful. All right. Those are my two tools. And for those who are local and national or based in the US who are watching, I have a Caring Professionals Mastermind coming up on October the 21st. That's going to be based out of Mount Sinai Hospital at 10 Union Square East. So if you go onto the Kuumba Health website, you'll see the application for that. It's a 3-part series that is a stress management mastery. Something that I found is that a lot of professionals are struggling, to your point, Angela, and we're talking about inner children and the things that we've talked about. And so I want to create a mastermind so that we, across disciplines, healthcare providers, practitioners, spiritual mentors, psychiatrists, nurses, can come together, reduce our stress, and really build some cohesion. So really the focus will be on a couple of things, and I'll keep them brief. The highlights you can check out on the website, but the focus will really be on looking at incorporating healing art, looking at incorporating mindfulness-based stress reduction techniques, and looking at incorporating many different forms of leadership principles to help you step into your vision, connect, and thrive. So check that out on the website. And for those who are looking around the world for meetings, I'm available for telehealth. That's available on, you can literally open your computer and enter it on Zoom or Doxy, and I can meet with you and your child. And I specialize in working with those who've been impacted by early childhood trauma and things around sexual health and sexual trauma. All right, so I'm happy to meet with you and your child, and let's build some healthier relationships. So I know I said that all very fast. 1, Caring Professionals Mastermind, sign up today. Applications are coming in and there are limited amounts, so sign up. And 2, check me out on telehealth through the Kuumba Health website, KUUMBA, or at Ask Sacred. And today we have the powerful Angela and Sacred have joined forces. I am so appreciative of our time together. Hurrah, hurrah. And thank you, Love Medicine viewers. And I forgot to mention, I'm drinking orange juice in my love cup.
Oh.
I didn't mention that. So to close out with the sweetness of orange juice, cheers, Angela. Cheers, Love Medicine TV viewers. Until next time, continue to be, live, love, lead, and learn Love Medicine TV. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Angela, for being an amazing.
Thank you, Sacred.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wow.